My name is Daniel Monehin, as you've heard, number 11666. And as soon as I've said that, some of you have said, oh, he's my junior. And then some of you are going, I don't think he's that old. He didn't look that old. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And it gave me goosebumps listening to the history. Is it okay? Listening to the history, listening to how far the Institute has come. But most importantly, where it's capable of going. And that's what we're going to be spending time talking about today. The most important river in Nigeria did not originate from Nigeria. It originated further west in Guinea, and it began to chart its course from Guinea through Mali, through Niger, through the top of Republic of Benin before coming into Nigeria and emptying into the Atlantic. A total distance of 4,200 kilometers. To put that in perspective, Abuja to London is 4,800 kilometers. So this is 90% of the way from Abuja to London. But the point I'm making here is this. Amongst many groups in Nigeria, there's a proverb that is very central to those cultures. And it says that the river that forgets its source will dry up. The River Niger is an indicator of what ICAN is. A river that does not forget its source. But also, the second part, which is what I'm going to speak to today, is but a river that charts new paths along the way. A river that creates new possibilities, and a river that brings prosperity wherever it goes. That's my assignment. Therefore, the question before us today is simple, yet profound. It's a simple question, yet it is not simplistic. It's a simple question, but it's one of the most difficult things to implement. Maybe we'll turn this off. Okay. It's very difficult to implement. And the question is this: how can ICAN, after 60 years, redefine its future? Redefine its future how? For this great organization, to being resolutely rooted in its history without being rendered irrelevant by that history. For it to have pride in its glorious past, yet able to pivot to a promising future. And lastly, an organization that is able to celebrate how far they have come without being shackled to pursue what is possible and how far they can go. That's the objective of my assignment today. And underneath it, we call it redefining the future. I've always wanted to see the origin of River Niger, but I never really went looking for it. But this assignment made me look for it. That's the humble beginning in Guinea of River Niger. The clicker is not responding as quickly anymore. Not sure. Okay. So that's another image of the humble beginning of this river that has brought a lot of life. Just as we heard the humble beginnings of ICAN, and it has brought a lot of life, a lot of careers, a lot of organizations, a lot of breakthroughs, a lot of expansion to our nations and beyond. So the question of redefining the future is what we're talking about today. But as we think about the refining of the future of ICAN, I want to let you know this, because a great speaker tells you the conclusion, before you get there. So here's the conclusion of the matter. What brought us so far as ICAN, okay, is insufficient to take us to where we want to go as an organization, okay? Now, it's a title of a book, actually, for leadership. It says, what brought you here will not take you there. Typically, you become a leader, you start from being an individual contributor, a technical person, maybe a chartered accountant, and you do so well, and then you get promoted into leadership. Where most leaders fail is that they continue acting as experts, as subject matter experts, as individual contributors, even though they now have a Pajero or Prado, they have a corner office, they are leaders. That is the beginning of a collapse of leadership. So that's what the book is about, that your technical training has brought you so far, but you need to turn on leadership skills to get to the next level. And that's the book by Marshall Goldsmith. He's been my mentor for about 10 years now, and he wrote the foreword of my book, which I'll talk to later. That's the picture, that's the summary of where we're going to go to, but now it's my assignment to convince you about this conclusion. So here goes. Around the late 1800s, an economist, Alfred Marshall, began to see the similarities between organizations and living organisms. And by 1890, he documented his findings, and he drew the correlation between the two. And he says, as organisms have phases of their lives, and even though it's been changed severally, the phases remain the same. And I call this phase, officially it's called the organizational life cycle. That's what it's called. But I prefer to call it the predictable path of progress. The fact that you are going on this path means that you have been successful. And nobody can argue with the success of ICAN. Nobody. But there is a predictable path that every successful organization goes through. And that path is what I've just shown you there on the screen. The first part of the part is the birth. We heard a lot about the birth of ICAN, the organization. Then it goes through enormous growth. And then it peaks at maturity, where it's a household name. People wake up and they go, oh, you know, I want to be an accountant because you met an accountant. I mean, in the church where I attended as a kid, one of the family, he became a family friend, family became a family friend. One of them was a chartered accountant. The wife was one of the partners of Coopers and Lybrand, Mrs. Kukoyi, and the husband was a commissioner in Ogun State, commissioner of finance. So I grew up looking at accountants. I was like, wow, these guys are really successful. That shows that you are doing something well. But predictably also, something happens to every organization, and none is exempted. None is exempted. And here's the wisdom behind this predictable path of progress. Hidden within the success and the harvest of success are what I call the seeds of decline. The seeds of decline are always part and parcel of a success of any organization. So, but it's at maturity that those seeds begin to manifest. So, what are those seeds that we're talking about? Relics, revered, risk-free routine, red tape reigns, relevance begins to retreat, and rigid rulership. Okay, I can see some of you are taking pictures. Don't worry, I'm going to make these slides available to the Institute and freely available to everybody. So don't worry about it. You will get this. Thank you. Relics, revered. If you're looking for an evidence that ICAN relishes its history and its past, and the revere relics is that we have been under an act for 60 years. The same act for 60 years. Now, in the past 3 years, there's been an attempt to change it, but it should have been changed about at least 6 times. About 10 years into it, it should have been reviewed over and over. That is a sign that this is maturity, that you've hit maturity. Another indication is the history we've heard. ICAN was run by volunteers, and therefore committees were necessary to make things run. Now ICAN has a management team, and we're still running it as though it is an organization of volunteers. The management team, based on my analysis, they've been emasculated. They virtually have any powers. All powers reside with the council. That is not how to build the next 60 years. It has worked so far. Oh, okay. It has worked so far. It's not going to work again. We need to build a management team that has the caliber of the council, and trust them, and get out of their way, and provide oversight for them. That's what they need. The best, and this is a template for the best run professional accounting organizations. Apart from ICAN, I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. I'm also a member of the Canadian Chartered Professional Accountants. I'm a fellow of that one. So I've seen it work. Management runs things. The members provide oversight through the council. Oversight, that is, you act as a board of directors. The moment you begin to meet monthly, you are running operations. You are not providing oversight. All right, let's move on. Risk-free routines. Another sign of maturity is we pull back from innovation because it's too risky. We don't try experimentation because it's too audacious. We are very careful, and then you now layer on top of it the fact that we are accountants. Somebody said, oh, we are conservative. Conservatism. The principle of conservatism has to do with the work, not necessarily with you. You should be bold when it comes to creating a new future. Don't pull punches. I'm talking about pulling punches. I was in my 3rd year when we had a career day that was supposed to encourage us to become accountants. And the accountants that came, they were so conservative. I was like, I did not want anything to do with these people. So for almost the first 10 years of my career, I ran away from the finance part of things. I was on the business side. When I became chartered accountant, I was already running P&Ls. Generating revenue from organization. I prefer that than to be an accountant because of the people that I saw that visited us. Okay? Conservatism itself is a good thing, but it can be overdone, especially when you've reached maturity. It begins to contribute negatively to the bottom line. The next is red tapes. Rules upon rules upon rules upon rules upon regulations upon rules, and then you do other rules to clarify the other rules that you've done. That is a red tape. You become a bureaucratic organization. The fourth talks about relevance retreating. Now, this is critical. As revenue and cash flow is to a business, so is relevance to a professional accounting organization. In a business, here's the difference. In a business, when revenue and cash flow are declining, everybody knows there's a problem. There's an alarm. Everybody runs to try and do something to save it. But in an organization like ICAN, when relevance is receding, you will only be hearing murmurs. There is no concerted effort to jump on and do something. Why? Because it's being run by volunteers anyway. There's a proverb that says that the community goat usually starves to death, because everybody thinks the other person is feeding the community goats. But if you give the goat to one CEO and you give them that responsibility and you empower them and you support them, then you have one neck to choke if there's a problem. Are we together? It's difficult to hold volunteers accountable in the long run. You need management. Finally, rigid rulership. At the point of maturity, something that Jim Collins talked about in his book, How the Mighty Fall. That's the title of the book, How the Mighty Fall. Many of you will not have heard of it, but you'll have heard of Good to Great. Good to Great, everybody talks about that one. The same research went into how the mighty falls. Nobody wants to pay attention to that because it speaks to the weaknesses of leadership at the maturity level. You feel that because you have been successful, you will continue to be successful. You become arrogant, hubris comes in, and you begin to shut down ideas from other quarters, especially from the younger generations. That is a seed of decline. That is a seed of decline. So, and here's the headline. Unless we redefine ICANN's future now, irrelevance is not a risk. It's a predictable certainty. It will happen. But it does not have to happen, okay? Because especially, and I've done this severally with my clients all over the world, when they begin to hit this point and we begin to review what is going on, I tell them, no. You don't have to go through there. There's something you can do that can redraw the line. So instead of going down, it goes the other way, and what was supposed to be a predictable path recedes completely. But in order to be able to achieve that, you cannot pray that to happen. You cannot wish it to happen. You cannot continue to do what you've been doing for 60 years for that to happen. You need to reimagine and redefine the future. This is possible. And this is what I want to see in ICANN, because I'm a vested member. See my FCA pin. I got it yesterday. That's how to redefine the line, to redraw the line, is by doing these three things. Number one, reignite the why. Number two, rebuild agility. And number three, reinforce leadership. The countdown clock is gone. Please look into that for me, because I want to keep to time. So, moving on, reignite the why. If you notice from the history that we've heard about the organization, excuse me. The history that we heard from the organization, the vision was clear. The mission drove them to make a lot of sacrifices. The passion for what they were to do, the purpose for why they organized was so real. By the time you're at maturity, it's in the rearview mirror. And that's why decline happens. So, in order to avoid the decline, you need to reignite your why. Look at the vision of ICANN today. Does this speak to the future of the next 10 to 30 years of the organization? Or is it still looking back? This is my time to talk about accuracy in that thing. Now we throw around in 1960, before computers, that made sense. The accountant was the image of accuracy. Do you think the organization is looking at you for accuracy? They've put systems in place for accuracy. You are not the custodian of accuracy. No. The systems are there. You are overseeing the system, but they are the ones doing the work. And that's why the value of the accountant has dropped in the eyes of the organization when they have not pivoted from accuracy and recording and all that of transactions into value-added activities for the organization. So reignite the why. Look at the vision of ICAN again. Look at the purpose of ICAN again. Look at the core values of ICAN again. It needs a rebirth. All of what we're seeing so far has nothing to do with AI, has nothing to do with the younger generation, has nothing to do with the technology that is available. It is backward looking, and it is time for us to press into new horizons, like we saw the River Niger charting different paths. When he was heading towards Mali, you would think he was going to go to Cairo, but he got there and he made a turn, and that's how he was able to come down to our own path. You have to make a turn at some point, and reigniting your vision is the way to do it. The second is to rebuild agility. What do I mean by that? Over time, as you become mature, bureaucracy is all over the place. Your speed becomes lethargic and slow, and you begin to lose opportunities that require responsiveness. Especially if you're running almost 70,000 member organization based on volunteers. You cannot be agile. There's so many things that we can look in here, but for my time, let's move on. The third and final is you reinforce leadership, from rigid rulership to effective leadership, to leadership that connects with the people. At maturity stage, you are talking to yourselves more than you are talking to the people that you're supposed to lead. But with leadership, you are connecting with empathy. Because when you talk about accuracy, that was when humans were like the computers. Now, computers are better at being machines than we are at being machines. Therefore, leave machine things to machines and focus on the human things that machines cannot do. There's a lot to be said about that, but again, let's move on. Therefore, we're saying that for this future of ICAN needs to act with the wisdom of a 60-year-old. Don't lose that wisdom. It's crucial. It's important. Okay? But you have to balance it with the curiosity of a startup and the courage of a reformer. Absolutely. So some people are already noticing the trend that, oh, it's getting younger from left to right. I actually saw some people doing that. Yep, you're right. And it's saying that it requires multiple generations to make this happen. One generation cannot do it. I'm Yoruba. The Yoruba proverb says that a civilization is built on the wisdom of both the old and the young. Not just the old. You need both. An example of that is this. So the Canadian CPA was the last thing that I did. I was already a CFO of MasterCard Canada when I became a Canadian CPA. But I was at an event like this, much smaller, but an event like this, and I spoke, and in the audience was the president of the institute, the CEO, the management, not council member, the management. And he saw me and he was like, "You're one of us." The next week, he was in my office, convinced me to join the highest level committee that they have called the Strategic and Risk Management Committee, where we charted the path of the institute for the next 10 years. That was what we met, but we only met 3 or 4 times in a year, not every month, okay? Oversight. But here's where I'm going. I was just 1 year old in the institute, and they brought me into that level of engagement. By the 2nd year, they had already nominated me to be a fellow institute. Now, let me explain how that works. In ICAN, you need 10 years postgraduate for you to become a fellow. The Canadian arrangement is very different. You get fellowship by the value that you bring to the organization and to your community. Therefore, as at the time I got it, only 0.6% of Canadian CPAs were fellows. And now, less than 1% will be fellows. So 99% of Canadians will practice, retire, pass on without becoming fellows. That was just the normal thing. But by my 2nd year 2, because they wanted I was in my 30s. I was in my 30s when this happened. They brought me in and they made me a fellow, and I became the first black fellow in the history of that organization, established in 1920. If they were looking at seniority, I would never have been there. But they will also have not benefited from what I brought to the table. So we need that blend as we begin to wrap up now. So this is the final phase of my discussion today. In charting the future of ICAN, there are 3 mega trends that you have to be conscious about. Why am I talking about mega trends? Mega trends are like the trade winds. They have a particular pattern. They will always blow in that pattern and blow consistently. And therefore, you as humans, you cannot control the wind, but you can adjust your sail to catch that wind that is blowing, and you will become relevant and you will become successful. That is the idea of looking at mega trends. So mega trends are like the persistent wind that some of them already started blowing very strongly, but they will only continue down the line. So here is the point. Here is the first one. Okay? Changing client and challenging competence is the first. Algorithms, automations, and the accountant's advantage. And the last is sustainability, stewardship, and societal significance. Beginning with the first one. I could say a lot of things on this mega trend, but here's what I'm going to say. The 7 largest organizations in the world by market capitalization are NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet or Google, Amazon, Meta, and Saudi Aramco. Okay? Those are the biggest companies in the world based on market capitalization. But guess what? Not one of the CFO is a professional accountant. Not one. Not one of the CFOs of the largest organizations in the world, not one of them is a professional accountant. That would have been sacrilegious 15 plus years ago, 20 years ago. Sacrilegious. But see, I spent 6 years on the Professional Accountants in Business Committee of IFAC, advising the IFAC board. And this was a consistent refrain every time we met. We met all over the world every time we met, and I was representing ICAN on that committee. They would be saying that the business is saying accountants are not responding to the skills that we need. They are focusing on skills that we have already automated. We don't care about this accuracy thing they're talking about. We want growth. We want strategy execution. Do you know why? 75% of strategies fail. Accountants are the most positioned to help organizations be successful in their strategy, but we're busy being proud of being accurate, being proud of, memorizing rules and knowing standards. They don't care about that. They don't. Therefore, they get people that studied French, that studied engineering, that studied history, one of them studied European history, and they will say, you, accountant, report to that person. Because that person has the leadership mindset that we've been waiting for you to develop, but you have not. So here is the thing. This is what PAOs, and this is not an ICAN challenge. Like I told you, we were discussing this at IFAC. It is a global challenge, I'm telling you, okay? PAOs, there's some things that they do well, the training for, very good. But I can tell you, I can summarize all of it. Technical training, that's what PAOs are good at, technical training. But more and more, the technical area has been automated. And the business are saying, we want you do that, yes, but this is what we are yearning for. It is more than what you are providing for us. Moving on, algorithms, automation, and the accountant's advantage. We've seen this. AI is here. It's already changing how things are working. Now, there was a research that was done by SAP, and they interviewed about 600 finance leaders from around the world. And here was a question that they asked them. Are you using AI now, or do you plan to use it in 2 years? 97% of them said yes. How can a PAO carry on, like an ICAN, carry on without having courses? As part of continuing education, those things you're just checking the box. I'm talking of certifications for accountants to equip them so that the market can begin to see them as AI intelligent professionals. Right now, they're not seeing them that way. But you can do that. If I go back here, if I go back to this is a massive revenue opportunity for ICAN. Massive. What PAOs are good at, you're charging peanuts for it, for those exams. Peanuts. What the companies want, they want to pay between 100 times and 1,000 times what you're charging on the technical side, so that you can equip accountants with the right skills. Therefore, if you're doing the right thing, you would never ask for donations again. I've never been in an organization that asks for donation, PAO. No. They always had the right programs that people paid for. So step away from the technical training only and expand into what the market is looking for. Okay? Thank you. And this is a picture for AI impact on audit. For the next period there, 30% CAGR. Amazing growth. Between 2025 and 2030, less than 5 years away, it will more than triple. That is how much these investments are going in, and you think that the human factor will just remain the same if you do not get the right skills? No, it won't. It won't. Sustainability. On this one, very quick one, it's gone from a single bottom line to the triple bottom line. That's what it is. And the headline here is that businesses cannot continue to succeed in a world that is failing. Businesses cannot continue to succeed in a world that is failing. Sustainability is crucial. And it begins with your people, it begins with the planet, and yes, profit is required. So, as I begin to round up now, when I work with organizations around the world, I tell them this, and this is pertinent to ICAN as well. The greatest fear that I have is not that you will take all this in, and then try to implement, try to carve a new future for yourself, and then you will fail. I don't have a fear for that, because I know that if you put your mind to it, you will amaze yourself with the successes that will come. So that's not my fear. My fear is that you become successful at doing the old things and you become irrelevant. That's my fear. That's my fear. I'll share this story and wrap up. When I was writing my final 4 courses to qualify to be a chartered accountant, ICAN, I wrote the 4 courses, put in everything that I had, and then I got reference in auditing. I was like, how? How? It didn't make sense to me, because I was not spoofed by anything. I was confident. I wrote the answers. I knew everything. So I said, okay, no problem. I can smell the victory. You know what I'm going to do? All the hours I spent studying for 4, I'm going to put it towards 1. I'm not going to cut any corners. And I did it. Ladies and gentlemen, I got another reference. I was like, what is going on? I was like, what is going on? Now, by this second time that I did it, I memorized virtually everything. I mean, I had all the time. And I delivered it. I was like, what is going on? But I remember one day I was studying, and a voice, it was like a thought that came to me. And the voice said, you need to change your handwriting if you want to pass this examination. I said, change my handwriting? There's nothing wrong with my handwriting. Now, to give you an idea of the handwriting, in my Form 1, I had a teacher, a class teacher, Mrs. Nwankwesi, Hazel Nwankwesi, married to an Igbo gentleman, but she's a Black American. And she writes cursive, okay? So I loved the handwriting. Even though she was not teaching us handwriting, I started writing cursive from then on. So that's my background. So I was like, this handwriting is clear. Then I remember one of my customers, Mr. Momo. He was the treasurer of ITT. And he was an ICAN examiner. So he came for a business transaction. After I finished with him, I said, Mr. Momo, do you have a few minutes? He said, yes. So I brought out my notebook. I said, if you come across an exam sheet like this, while you're marking, what would you think? He said, Mumbo. He, put on his glasses, very small glasses like this. He was like, Ele fail. I was like, huh? I said, explain, what do you mean? What do you mean? He said, look, we get paid by the number of papers that we mark. He said, and we are assigned only one question. So that question, as an examiner, you know all the key words you are looking for. So he said, so when I pick an answer sheet, all the key words jump out. He said, but for this one, I would need to be reading each. He said, I don't have time. I said, whoa. So instead of spending hours studying, I started learning to check my handwriting. And that was how I became successful. Thank you. That voice, I call it the voice of your future. That is the voice that will tell you you need to make this sacrifice. You will need to make this change. It may not make sense. It may feel uncomfortable, but you should do it. Then there is another voice, the voice of fear, that will tell you we don't normally do things like this. This is not, this is too audacious. Remember, we are very conservative people. We should not be reaching beyond. The question is, which would you listen to? I've made a couple of references to my book. That's it. And in the first 6 hours that it was launched, it hit #1 on Amazon Hot New Release. Really excited. An Amazon bestseller. But this is what I want to end with. The words of Rudyard Kipling to his son. Then eventually he published it. Eventually. But he wrote it in around 1895. So he's a 130 years old today. This is what he said. He said, are you listening? He said, if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but you make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait but not be tired of waiting, being lied about, don't deal in lies, being hated, don't give way to hating, yet don't look too good nor talk too wise, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet both triumph and disaster and treat both impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by deceitful people to make trap for fools, or watch what you spent your whole life building and collapses and you begin to rebuild it with worn-out tools. He says, if you can stand before the crowd and not lose your virtue, and keep your virtue. If you can walk with kings and not lose your common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you. If all men count with you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiven minute with 60 seconds of distance run, then yours is the earth and everything there is in it. And what is more, you'll be great leaders, my friend. Thank you very much.